Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Omar Khalid. But today is Friday, the 28th of October 2022, and these are the stories that we will be discussing in detail in the course of the show. We will begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the comment of the Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, who on Thursday has said that he hoped to have Gilgit-Baltistan as part of India to complete the mission that the Indian Modi government began by annexing Kashmir in August of 2019. This is, of course, a strong statement and of course a continuation of the whole series of attacks, verbal and otherwise, on Pakistan and on Muslims in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And of course, as we all know, yesterday was the Kashmir's Black Day, because it was yesterday when the Indian troops had entered the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir in 1947. We will be talking about that in detail, the Indian hegemonic actions since 1947 that continue to date, and these hegemonic designs to include more territories within India as well. Our second segment concerns the Russia-Ukraine standoff, war, conflict that is continuing. Now, Joseph Biden, who is the US President, says that Vladimir Putin's talk of possible use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine is dangerous. Putin says that he has not threatened to use nuclear weapons and had only responded to nuclear blackmail from Western leaders. Although Joe Biden does say that if he has no intention, why does he keep talking about it? The latest from the Ukraine-Russia war will be discussed as part of our second segment. Then, our third story, we'll be talking about flood, the latest updates as far as the floods are concerned. A review meeting on the rehabilitation of flood victims was chaired by Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Saab today, and he directed the authorities to use all the available resources on an emergency basis for the rehabilitation of the flood victims. Also, SN Iqbal Saab has talked about the devastating floods and the damage that they have caused of over $30 billion to the country. He was sharing details of the post-disaster needs assessment report that was launched in Islamabad on Friday. Minister for Climate Change Sharif Rahman also addressed the August ceremony. Then we will be talking about Elon Musk, who has officially taken control of Twitter after finalizing the deal worth $44 billion to buy the social media network. What does he do? As a first step, he fires the top 3 executives, including the CEO and others, citing people, of course, and there are certain issues with that, or certain questions that people are asking as to why did he fire the top officials. This is going to be our fourth story. Then we'll be talking about the Rochdale gang. 2 members of a Rochdale gang in the United Kingdom are being deported to Pakistan after losing a 7-year legal battle to remain in the United Kingdom. Adil Khan, 51 years of age, Qazi Abdul Rauf, 53 years of age, who are part of this Rochdale gang, are going to be deported to Pakistan. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the Indian hegemonic designs of not only not letting go or giving the rights to people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but also the trying to annex more parts of the subcontinent as part of India. More in the following report.
The regional reprobate India has wicked history of hatching conspiracies against Pakistan in its bid to accomplish Hindutva's expansionist idea of so-called Akhand Bharat. Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the highest militarized zone in the world, has rarely seen a peaceful day under brutal Indian occupation. India has tried every measure of suppression to curtail the legitimate demand of Kashmiri people, their right to self-determination. Demonstrating Indian hegemonic designs, Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh expressed delusion to have Gilgit-Baltistan as part of India. To complete the mission, the Modi government began by annexing Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir in August 2019. Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto's letter on worsening situation in Indian illegally occupied Kashmir has been delivered to UN leadership by Pakistan's ambassador to United Nations, Munir Akram. Organization of Islamic Cooperation has reiterated its call on international community to step up its efforts to resolve the issue of Jammu and Kashmir in accordance with UN Security Council resolutions. In a series of tweets, the OIC General Secretariat urged India to halt and reverse its illegal steps to change internationally recognized disputed status of the territory and to alter the demographic structure of the territory. The lasting peace in South Asia will remain elusive until India brings atrocities in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir to a grinding halt.
To discuss that and more, we've been joined by Qamar Cheema, who's a leading foreign affairs expert. Thank you very much, Qamar Cheema Saab. And of course, your hold on strategy and politics in the region is also quite renowned. Qamar Cheema Saab, let's begin with the Indian hegemonic designs. We know that India has always wanted to assess and have annex more parts of the subcontinent that are now part of Pakistan, including Gilgit-Baltistan, including the Azad Jammu and Kashmir region, and more. How do you view this statement that was made by the Defence Minister Rajnath Singh? In which context would you take it? Is it political in nature? Is it strategic in nature? Or there are some other angles to it as well?
Thank you very much, Bhatt Sahib. I think there are so many angles to this. First of all, what they believe that we need to give a confidence to their own people, and that confidence is more being more aggressive against Pakistan, telling them that domestically we have to unite against Pakistan, and giving a message even to maybe to the Kashmiris as well that we have a complete hold over you, we have a complete control over you, and we are not just going to stick with this expansionist design of having Indian occupied Kashmir with us. We are looking for other territories in the region. So that is why we call India as an expansionist country. India is an expansionist country, and this expansionism, the Prime Minister Modi has given a new life to this. So with the rising India's economic clout, the political stability within India, where Prime Minister Modi got elected second time, this gave them a power, and that is why they brought constitutional changes. And with all that constitutional changes, they are generating a political rhetoric inside the country. And now remember, the defense minister was giving a written speech. It was not a political rally. It was a speech in front of the Indian soldiers, I think infantry soldiers, and he was talking. And recently, when Prime Minister Modi was in Kargil, I think a few weeks ago, for celebrating Diwali or something like that, he again chanted anti-Pakistan slogans and called that Kargil is a flag, Kargil is a place where we raise flag. So I think the next elections, which are very much important, and they're keeping a momentum for that as well. So if you look at Amit Shah, the Home Minister, is saying that we are not going to talk with Pakistan when he comes visit Kashmir. The Defense Minister speaks in the same tone. Prime Minister Modi speaks in the same tone. And the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, who believes in offensive defense, which means to launch offensive campaigns against Pakistan, either through the fifth generation warfare or through sending people like Kulbhushan Yadav and many other underground projects which are going on. One thing. So I think this, along with all that, what the Indians are doing and saying, I think if you just look at what is happening in Pakistan, I think we will need a political stability in the country, and we need an economic stability in the country. We really want to look at what's going on in our neighborhood. So if we will keep engaging and arguing with each other at home, things will not be the same. And at the end of the day, for instance, if you just look at the international audience, which has appreciated Pakistan's efforts in fighting terrorism, when it comes to the FATF, we did well job over the period of time. And all those Indian plans, which Ajit Doval calls as the offensive defense, to keep an enemy engaging, they believe that a traditional war or traditional engagement is not possible. So the best way is to keep Pakistan struggling in front of international audience. So that was a failure of Indian diplomacy and a success of them as well. The success was that they kept Pakistan, the global pressure for 5 years, and the failure is that they wanted to keep Pakistan, but I think over the period of time, Pakistan managed to get out of it. But what is important right now, Batsab, we need a strong political stability at home so that we can see what are the India's regional designs, and we need a united front when it comes to our traditional rival, which leaves no stone unturned in hedging conspiracies and implementing the offensive agenda, and at the same time giving inflammatory statements against Pakistan, which obviously creates an anti-Pakistan rhetoric within the Indian public.
Speaking of anti-Pakistan rhetoric, do you feel that this anti-Pakistan rhetoric that was always there from the Indian side has all of a sudden gained momentum because of two important points. The first being the German foreign minister who talked about the Indian-held Kashmir issue, and the second, the visit of Mr. David Bloom, who is of course the current US ambassador to Pakistan, who visited Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Do you feel the international bodies or the important world players are also recognizing who's on the right side and who isn't?
I think the international community, if you just look at how they're engaging with India, uh, for instance, what the German foreign minister said, coming out of this FATF American ambassador's visit to AJK, I think all that tells that Pakistan is back into the diplomacy. Pakistan is back on the track with the stable political government, which obviously needs even its opposition on its side to confront the Indian hegemonic designs in the region and Indian expansionist policy. This is the one thing. The second thing is that the international audience, they are looking, Prime Minister Modi, they're looking at the hate which is there against the Muslims in India, and they're looking that the world, while looking all that, there is a criminal silence, which I call. For instance, just recently we saw that the Indian journalists have not been allowed to travel abroad. Even the Kashmir is being controlled by the central government. So on one hand, they want to expand, want to be an expansionist power. They want to get hold of Azad Kashmir and the Gilgit, but on the other hand, they are controlling Indian occupied Kashmir from New Delhi. So the Srinagar is being controlled by the New Delhi, and there are no elections, and that is the fear. So I think they are creating a kind of an aura of their personalities, which is good when it comes to other parts of India, but that is not good, for instance, in the northern part of India, because they have not accepted Modi's these warmongering, hegemonic designs and this sinister anti-Muslim messaging, which the leadership, its followers, second leadership, they keep on doing. But at the end of the day, I would again urge, and I will again speak, we need a united front. A united front can only...
That's a very important point, and I'd like to ask my next question regarding that. You know, this statement on Gilgit-Baltistan that Rajnath Singh has given reminds us of what happened in 1994, the resolution that was passed on Gilgit-Baltistan by the then Prime Minister Narasimha Rao in the Indian Parliament. This was passed in the Indian Parliament. Do you feel the timing of this statement coincides with the political instability in Pakistan? Do you feel that India is trying to take advantage of the current situation in Pakistan?
Well, obviously, India is looking at two things very carefully. India is looking at Pakistan's constant economic situation, where we find that the country is facing issue of balance of payment, foreign exchange reserve, and so many other things. And they're looking that since the political power in the country is not being settled, and I think here they believe that that is the best time to target Pakistan through the non-combatant means, and those non-combatant means are using diplomacy, offensive diplomacy. If you just look today, India is hosting a UN counterterrorism meeting in the Mumbai, where they're saying that why you brought Pakistan out of the FATF grey list. So Dr. Jaishankar is trying to convince the world that that was a wrong decision. But at home, when we are occupied and busy, and we are trying to figure out who should be who in this country, obviously on the next door, the entire international community, the UN Counterterrorism Committee is in Mumbai talking about Pakistan. So I think that is where a united front I was talking, that is where we need to stand together. Otherwise, we will not be in a position to manage things. At the other hand, the Indians believe that if uh, hit them economically, hit them with the political stability. They have their own proper fifth generation teams which are trying to destabilize Pakistan through social media. There, for instance, just today the opposition leaders' speeches were shown live on Indian media because those were against the Pakistani institutions. I think this is where the instability is there, and we need to look it very carefully. Whatever we are, that is because of the Pakistan. So at the end of the day, if the top leadership in this country, the top political leadership in this country, if they do not show maturity, they do not sit on table, they do not have a dialogue for running this country, there is no political stability. And if we do not follow the constitution, if we do not go, if we are keep asking for the unnecessary constitutional demands, I think that is going to damage internally political stability. And when there is no political stability, economically we get disturbed. And then in regional affairs, when Afghanistan, we find because of Afghanistan, there is an instability when you find the Pakistani dollar is not standing in one position because because of the gray market and the black market. Our own economy is under stress. Although the global financial institutions are putting money here in Pakistan, but when they find that in 1 year this government will not be here, who will be the next government? And they have a rhetoric. So obviously things don't go normal, and even we try to tell the world things are normal when they look at the economic indicators, when they look at the social unrest, when they look at that how this society, this country is occupied with mudslinging with each other, and how the leadership even does not trust the state institutions. And I think that is the dangerous thing when the people do not, when the media gets controversial, when the state institutions get controversial, when the top leadership on whom the people lose their trust, I think that is where the country starts falling. And we need to be very careful. The Pakistani institutions are strong. The people love Pakistan, but here the responsibility comes at the top political class to keep engaging people positively and not
All right.
creating chaos
All
and
right.
anarchy.
Let's come to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. We've talked enough of Pakistan and, of course, the relationship with the way India is becoming more aggressive towards this country, and is, of course, leveling statement after statement and accusation after accusation. Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Qamar Cheema Saab, Pakistan has highlighted the issue many a times through statements, through addresses to different world fora, through different documentations with facts and figures as far as the atrocities in the Held Valley are concerned. So have other human rights organizations, so has Genocide Watch, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and the list goes on. Do you feel a time will come when the world will react not by statements alone, but by action of some means, in order to make India understand that whatever is happening within the Held Valley, whatever is happening through its hegemonic statements and actions, is more the sign of a country that is bent towards genocide and not towards a country that calls itself pluralistic?
Well, Batsab, I think the word is the India is already facing a music, and that music is in shape of when the Indian Foreign Minister of External Affairs goes to United States, and he has to ask that why India is not getting a good press in Washington D.C., why the Western media is targeting India. And I think the international media is targeting India not because of Pakistan or because of other things. I think if West has certain moral values, and if West has created a moral universal code, then I think those moral universal code is from where we have to look the leadership in India. And we have a global constitutional global legal charter which forbids states not to suppress minorities, which basically ask leaders not to go for a genocide, which ask like India talking to the world that we are the largest democracy, but why they have to control Srinagar from New Delhi. And since this is happening 5th August 2019, And I think this is the question which every foreign dignity must ask the Indian leadership and the foreign media outlet, which is in New Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad. They need to ask these questions that what are
That is so
Ukraine
true, Qamar. A lot of questions need to be asked internally through the opposition that seems to be sane in India, and by all the important global leadership to India on the way it is moving forward as far as its internal politics and its external politics, especially towards Pakistan is concerned. Thank you very much, Qamar Cheema, to have joined us, to have talked to us about the statement by Rajnath Singh as far as annexation of more areas in the subcontinent is concerned. Let's come to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the Russia-Ukraine war that has been going on for more than 200 days now. A lot of developments happen more or less every single day, the latest being Joe Biden that has cast aspersions on Vladimir Putin's denial of use of dirty weapons or nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Will that happen? Will that not happen? More in the following report.
Amid Russians' wide-ranging missile barrage on Ukraine and nuclear saber-rattling, the war in Ukraine is entering dangerous phase. Russian President Vladimir Putin raised alarm that world faces the most dangerous decade since World War II as Western elites scramble to prevent the inevitable crumbling of the global dominance of United States and its allies. Joe Biden, the President of United States, expressed skepticism about Putin's comment that he had no intention of using a nuclear weapon in Ukraine. If he has no intention, why does he keep talking about it? Biden said in an interview with News Nation. The US is reportedly preparing a new $275 million package of military assistance for Ukraine to bolster its counteroffensive against Russian forces. Russian Foreign Ministry warned that Russia will retaliate if its state and citizens' assets are confiscated by the European Union. Moscow also said the provisions of Black Sea grain deal to ease Russian agricultural and fertilizer exports were not being met, adding that it was yet to decide whether the agreement should be extended. Russia sent troops into Ukraine on February 24th, triggering the biggest showdown with the West since 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis in the depths of the Cold War, when the Soviet Union and US came closest to nuclear war.
Now, to discuss more on the Russia-Ukraine war, we've been joined by our eminent guest, and she is none other than Dr. Amina Mehmood, Foreign Affairs expert. Dr. Amina, thank you very much to have joined us. It had been some time that we had interacted on my show, so welcome to Newsroom. Russia, Ukraine, West. There seems to be a lot of question marks when it comes to where all of this is going. The relationship between Ukraine and the West, the relationship as far as the tensions between Ukraine and Russia are concerned. As in your point of view, as somebody who understands, with whom I've talked in the past as well on the Russia-Ukraine war, what are the strategic goals of all the stake players as far as this war is concerned that has now passed 200 plus days?
Very complex game. Thank you very much for inviting me. It has been always a pleasure to be in your program. Actually, I was abroad and I was not available here.
Right.
That's why. And during that period, actually, I was watching US policy on Ukraine very closely, because I happened to be in a number of meetings where policy makers were there and they were discussing US plan. Situation is too complex. Actually, Ukraine is not, superpowers always play proxies, and this is the case for Ukraine as well. Russia is reclaiming power. They are re-emerging as the successor. They are reclaiming their position as the successor power of USSR, and they were apprehensive about the NATO expansion towards Western Europe, and especially on the areas which are encircling Russia, present Russia. And that's why Ukraine was became the target, because Ukraine was actually intended to have a membership of NATO, and US and NATO countries already extended to some of the neighboring countries already.
But not Ukraine.
But not Ukraine. And it's again a politics, because if they would have accepted the application of Ukraine a day before this invasion even, then it was a moral responsibility, moral, physical, legal responsibility of NATO to fight along with Ukraine to defend them. But they don't want to take that responsibility, because they prefer to play proxy rather than direct war.
Dr. Amina, Ukraine's grid operator announces temporary blackouts in several cities following Russian attacks on energy facilities. Mr. Zelensky says we are not afraid of the dark. And of course, the Russian soldiers are edging closer to Bakhmut, which has remained under Ukrainian control despite Moscow's goal of capturing the entire Donbas region. Do you feel Russia is going to further annex more areas within Ukraine? Do you feel it's going to claim them as its own? What is, in your point of view, the ultimate goal as far as this annexation of Ukrainian areas is concerned?
Actually, Russia wanted to make Ukraine an example, because they have been warning this, and there was, there was first episode of Ukrainian war in 2016, and there we had the same situation. But then US and others intervened, there were negotiations and they have to withdraw. And apparently it looked that there would Ukraine act as a buffer zone, but it could not be. And then a war escalated again. It was despite of repeated warning by Russia that if they would, you are going to encircle us, we will attack, and it happened. Actually, the politics in Ukraine is very complex. In Ukraine, there is a large population of Russian vernacular. They speak Russian, they are Russian by culture, but in Virginia, there was a conference on rethinking region, and there was a person doing PhD in United States, and he was from Russian vernacular. He said, we speak Russian, but we are Ukrainian, and we don't want to go back to Russia, but Russia claimed that they are integral part of their population because they are Russian speaking. So
but Vladimir Putin, Dr. Amina, insists that Russia's war in Ukraine is going according to plan in a combative anti-West approach. The West begs to differ. Who should we believe?
War is basically a propaganda war. And every nation claimed that they are going to have a success, and that is actually a war of nerves. And as Mr. Putin announced that he will not refrain from using even nukes in that war, certainly it is not possible, because they are having close proximity, physical and geographical proximity, and use of nuclear weapon in Ukraine will also having effect, long-term effect on Russian areas as well. But he is giving threat, and threat perception is more than the threat even.
Now,
so
speaking of threat perception or threats, let's also talk about the US allies, let's talk about the EU, and I'd like to refer to what the German President, Mr. Frank-Walter Steinmeier, said very recently. He said, Russian invasion of Ukraine has plunged Europe into an era of insecurity.
Exactly, and that insecurity is number of terms. One is strategic. That when Russian came out of their borders following Hitler, leading to Eastern Germany. So the whole Eastern Europe was under the influence of Russia. That can happen again if they would West would not be able to successfully counter that attack, and Ukraine, they would not stop at Ukraine. One. Secondly, they are providing grain, they are providing gas, they are providing oil to the whole Europe, and this winter is going to be a nightmare for Europe because energy prices are so high in this,
especially with winter approaching.
And that would be a nightmare for them, because I have read a study where a retired woman was saying that she won't be able to afford bread and butter of 2 times. She would sacrifice a cut of 1 meal for affording the energy bill. So, it's such a grave situation that they are going to live like anyone in the third world.
So in your point of view, this war is going to be a long term war, I mean more than a year, more than 2 years maybe, or are you looking at an even longer period of time?
And Omar, it has all the potential to indulge 2 superpowers in Ukraine for longer term, because US is determined to send not only arms but also the advisors. And I afraid if advisors would stay for long, then there would be American boots on the soil as well. And it can be another Vietnam for United States, and it can be another Afghanistan for Russia. So world is suspecting a bigger war, escalation of Third World War.
And you said, of course, the role of the media. For example, the Western media is detailing contours of Ukraine counter-offensive. But in your point of view, this counter-offensive, is this actually lethal as far as its force is concerned, or its fabrication of propaganda warfare? Because this is what you just mentioned a few minutes back, propaganda war.
Yeah, both aspects are there. It is lethal because you have seen a lot of dead bodies, and you know, this darkness and blackout are the part of war, because you don't want to make visible your targets to the enemy. But you know, that is not that much effective, because Russian already know that area. They know, and their pilots who are serving there, they have been living in Ukraine, and they are personally aware of the targets as well. So it is very hard to save you, and Ukraine is having not that much capacity in terms of army and weapons, though they are being boosted by the West, but for that purpose they need capacity to use those weapons. So war can escalate for a long, and obviously propaganda is there to boost the morale of the people. And Ukrainians are having certainly high morale, because they don't want to go into Russian influence again, because that was a nightmare.
That is true. 247 days, Dr. Amina. Do you feel this war is going to take a turn for the worst? I mean, with a lot of talk about dirty bombs, nuclear bombs. Russian President Vladimir Putin, Mr. Putin says that he had not threatened to use nuclear weapons, had only responded to nuclear blackmail from the Western leaders. But Joe Biden dismisses this denial from Vladimir Putin. Who is playing as far as this nuclear warfare or dirty bombs are concerned? Because this is a very dangerous situation if it ever comes to that.
Yeah, and for that purpose, Ukraine requested to International Atomic Commission to come and witness that, and then give a report, so that Russian claims may be denied. But you know, since at the time of independence from Russia, Ukraine withdrew all its nuclear assets, and they were surrendered back to their imperial power. So now they were not having that, and Russia claims that they are adding enriched uranium to ordinary bombs, which are used by the terrorists and so, but that would be equally lethal when they would be used for the local population especially, and that will not affect Russian army, but also the local population, though that would be a disaster. That's why in order to avoid any chance from Mr. Putin to take wrong decision to come through nukes, that's why President of Ukraine took this measure to involve IAEA.
Which also brings me to another fact, and that is the use of banned biological weapons. The US and the allied forces, Western allies, have dismissed claims by Russia that banned biological weapon activities were taking place in Ukraine with the support of the United States of America. There is a 310-page document that Russia has circulated to council members at the third UN Security Council meeting on Ukraine-related issues that Russia has called since Tuesday, and it alleges in that report that military biological activity in Ukraine is going on with the support of Washington. Should we believe this Russian report?
I think that is not workable for Ukraine, because those banned biological weapons that they would be used, if they would be used against Russian army, that would be having counter effect on their own population. They cannot use within their own territory. So that may be exaggeration, that may be not right. So they may be having those biological weapons, but they may be used when they would advance into Russian area, and that is not possible in the near future, because
but this is a very alarming situation if there is any truth to it.
But that is obvious in war. There were claims that US used all these biological weapons in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and whenever superpowers intervene, they have this they ignore all human rights violation, which they claim that they are not doing, but actually they do.
All right, now a Moscow-backed official in Crimea says that civilian evacuations from occupied Kherson are complete. They also say that after visiting the region with the Kremlin's domestic chief, Mr. Krylenko. Now, as far as Crimea is concerned, we know the past. We know of 2016 that you mentioned. And now, what kind of future do you see of next states such as Crimea? What's going to happen to them?
Omar, the only thing we have discussing international affairs again and again, war is no solution.
True.
War cannot be a solution. You have to come to negotiation table to resolve your issues, even after killing 100 million people, 10 million people, 20 million people, as you see that happened in Afghanistan, in Iraq and elsewhere in Latin American countries. Earlier the better it is to make these European understand. They have not faced war since Second World War. They were playing these wars, imposing these wars to the third world and rest of the world, especially the Muslim world. So they are not aware of the disaster. And within this 3 or 4 months period, they are now facing a refugee crisis, energy crisis, food crisis, and dead bodies and casualties. Now they are waking up. But I think that America, that is a distance power, they are not realizing that. They are again there to make Russia learn a lesson. But that is not good.
Now, speaking of energy,
that is not option.
Now, speaking of energy issues, Swedish prosecutors have said they are going to conduct a new crime scene investigation of the Nord Stream leaks. We know that the leaks were happening, and there have been accusations and counter accusations as far as what is in fact the reality behind these leaks. Now, the Navy and the pipeline owner have also begun surveys this week. What, in your point of view, is happening as far as these gas pipelines are concerned?
Gas pipeline may be broken, may be intercepted, may be stopped, because energy is a very critical point for the whole Europe. And since Ukraine is the major source, that some of the European countries have arranged alternate sources, like Germany just had an agreement with UAE, and about other countries are doing the same. But still that pipeline that makes the major source for the whole Europe. So, especially in the rising in the coming winter, it would be good.
But you know, it comes back to the fact that the European Union and European countries need the energy, need the gas, and they don't have enough time to, you know, go for alternate sources.
Alternate infrastructure, that is very important, because pipeline making is not a joke, and especially when there is a war. And while they would be making some other arrangement, Russia can attack directly on those arrangements as well. So again, there would be some solution by sitting together. If NATO would intervene, that we are not going to extend itself there, or etc. Ultimate solution is sitting on negotiation.
You know, Dr. Amina, you said negotiations are the ultimate solution. We all remember the 2 rounds of negotiations that happened. The second round was, in fact, quite a good one, and we were quite optimistic that some good outcome might come off it, because both the sides were optimistic. But then everything kind of phased off. Who is really sincere as far as moving towards a negotiated solution is concerned, or does it favor both sides to continue with a war-like situation?
I think that Europe is more sincere in concluding positively, because they are the major stakeholders right now. But Russians, they want to teach the lesson to the Western world, that how dare they, because they have been warning them for the last 4 or 5 years, and they were not giving heed to its warnings. So I think that Russia, as they claim that they are on winning side and they are making strides in war, so they would think that that is the opportunity to make score settles for once for all. So I think that it would be from Russian side that they would continue, unless they would be offered some very attractive solution by Western countries, especially the NATO countries.
All right.
And the United States.
But there are different definitions or interpretations of what is an attractive solution or proposition for both sides.
Simple definition in IR is attractive solution is the rational solution that suits to your national interest.
All right.
It may be disaster for others, but it suits to your interest. You will be that.
But you know, the national interests, Dr. Amina, are so different when it comes to Ukraine or Russia. Ukraine wants to be part of NATO. Ukraine wants to be part of the European Union, and it's taking its time. Russia wants its own interests. Russia wants to have most of Ukraine as part of Russia. Putin has repeatedly wanted to protect Russian interests at all costs. To which extent, in your point of view, will a person like Vladimir Putin go to protect the so-called Russian interests?
I think Russia is now a revisionist power. Russia is re-emerging. So, this is the opportunity to reclaim their military might. So, Russia, Mr. Putin would go to all extent, because this is the rare opportunity he had got now, because previously he was trying to convince that there should be some peaceful solution, and that was not offered. And NATO and US was taking it as a routine matter, as just a threat perception, but not the real one. But once it started, there is no control of West, and they are not able to counter it. And
but
now and they don't want to counter it physically. They want to put Ukrainian on the forefront, just boosting them with weapons and support and advisors. So, I think that that would be very much in Russian capacity. They might lose in one area or the other, but the way you have seen that they have annexed 3 major areas as their part, they are going to take the whole Ukraine, and they have targeted for that.
So, this means this is going to be a long-ranging war. It's going to take more than a year. Already 247 days have passed. We might see 200 or even more days as far as this conflict is concerned. But, at which cost? At the cost of the people, isn't it? Whether it be the people in Russia, whether it be the people in Ukraine, whether it be the people of the world, because as you said, economically the world is suffering. As far as food security is concerned, the world is suffering. As far as political and geostrategic issues are concerned, the world is suffering. But I fail to understand why we are not moving towards negotiation.
We can suspect that war is going to escalate more, and there would be more disaster, because since Mr. Biden claimed that we are not going to allow Russia to annex the whole Ukraine, and as they are sending their advisors, and they have sent big, consignments of weapons there, I am afraid that if there would be no control by the Ukrainians, there may be physical intervention by NATO or US, and that would be more disaster.
Exactly.
And again, Ukraine would be the battleground like Afghanistan. And
let's hope it doesn't come to that. Let's really hope it doesn't come to that. We've already seen.
And for that purpose, UN has to intervene, I think.
Let's hope. We can only hope, Dr. Amina, and discuss and highlight this and let the world know what needs to be done and what is the right direction to take. Thank you very much, Dr. Amina Mehmood, Foreign Affairs expert, to have joined us, and it was a pleasure to have you in the studios, because we love discussing foreign affairs, we love discussing issues, and I love understanding what your point of view on this is as well. Thank you so very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Let's come to our last 2 stories, ladies and gentlemen, last 3 stories in fact, and we'll end with something else as well. Let's talk about the floods first of all. The Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Saab has directed to use all the resources on an emergency basis for rehabilitation of the flood victims. He said this while meeting on the rehabilitation of flood victims that was chaired by him in Islamabad today. Minister for Planning Ehsan Iqbal Saab also briefed the Prime Minister about the post-disaster need assessment report for sustainable rehabilitation of the flood victims, and this report of course has been prepared with the coordination of the United Nations, the Asian Development Bank and other international partners. Finance Minister Ishaq Dar, Minister for Climate Change Shahid Rahman, National Coordinator for National Food Response Coordination Center, Lieutenant General Muhammad Zafar Iqbal were also present, and then of course there was a meeting for the media as well, where Ehsan Iqbal Saab also talked about the recent devastating floods that have inflicted a damage of about $30 billion to the country. He was sharing details of the same report that I've just talked about. He said Pakistan needs $16 billion for reconstruction and rehabilitation. 1,730 people, he said, have died, and over 33 million have been affected by the floods in the country. Minister for Climate Change Shahid Rahman Sahiba said that it is a moral responsibility of the world to help Pakistan deal with this unprecedented climate disaster. And of course, she said the onus of responsibility lies on the international community. Then let's talk about Twitter and Elon Musk, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Elon Musk has officially taken control of Twitter after finalizing a $44 billion deal to buy the social media network. What does he do? First of all, he fires 3 top executives, including CEO Parag Agarwal. Multiple United States-based media outlets have reported this. Also, Chief Financial Officer Ned Segal and Vijaya Gadde, who is the head of legal policy and trust, was let go. Sean Edgett, who's Twitter's general counsel, was also fired. Twitter, after all firing all these people, Elon Musk tweeted, "The bird is freed," referencing to the social media's network's bird logo. These firings have yet to be confirmed officially by Musk and Twitter. How is this going to bode for the future of Twitter? Will there be more freedom of expression on Twitter, less censorship or more censorship? Only time will tell. But of course, Elon Musk enters Twitter, and with a bang, by firing the top executives. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the Rochdale grooming gang members. 2 members of a Rochdale grooming gang are said to be deported to Pakistan after losing a 7-year legal battle to remain in the United Kingdom. Adil Khan, who's 51, and Qari Abdul Rauf, who is 53, had been convicted in the year 2012 in a series of sexual offences against young girls and were jailed later the same year. They had mounted a legal challenge after Theresa May had told them they would be deported. Judges Charlotte Welch and Sue Ling Yok said Khan has showed a breathtaking lack of remorse about his part in the 9-member grooming gang, the famous Rochdale gang that I've talked about it. People believe they have abused as many as 47 vulnerable girls in Rochdale between the years 2008 and 2010. Khan was jailed for 8 years, convicted of trafficking a 15-year-old girl, and of course this looks to be as if these 2 people are going to be deported to Pakistan. Let's see how Pakistan is going to take care of these 2 offenders. And let's come finally, ladies and gentlemen, to pollution, climate change. And we've seen how floods have affected Pakistan, the devastation that has been caused by the floods. But 2 major cities of Pakistan have also ranked highest as far as air pollution is concerned, Lahore and Karachi. And both cities have a very dangerous air index, that is 250 and 233 particulate meters respectively, which comes under the classification of dangerously harmful levels. We've had different reports, ladies and gentlemen, internationally as well, before talking of Lahore and Karachi of being one of the most polluted cities in the world. When Pakistan is confronted with challenges after these floods, it is pertinent, important for the provincial governments to immediately take steps so that Pakistan's important cities such as Karachi and Lahore come out of this current pollution or rate of pollution that it is engulfed in, especially during the winter season. It's time to reflect, it's time to retrospect, it's time to make Pakistan more clean and greener, especially these important cities such as Karachi and Lahore. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah on Monday with new story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe and kindly help those who are in need because of the floods through whichever means you can.